There are 8 named phases of the moon, and that is a cycle that repeats. So what I want us to do is we're going to draw 9 circles because we're going to have the 8 phases, and then we're going to do the first one again to show that repetition. So an easy way to draw 9 circles on your page and have them all fit, because I've had some people who have struggles fitting them, is just below this red line here, in the center, I'm going to draw a circle about the size of a quarter. Then on either side of the page, draw a similarly sized circle. So now we have about 3 circles equidistant apart. Now between these two, we draw circles, and then we draw a circle between each of those. And what you'll get is 9 approximately the same size circles spread out over your page. We're going to label these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1, because we're back where we started. When people were naming the moon, they started with the phase new moon because it seemed like the old moon from last month was gone and a new moon was beginning. So the new moon is where we start. And so position 1 here is going to be the new moon. It's also going to be the new moon over here because this is position 1 again. And it seemed like it was a new moon to the people observing it because it completely disappeared. The entire moon was in shadow. The sun was shining on the opposite side. So our new moon is going to look dark to us. We can't see any of the lighted side. So we're going to shade all of that new moon dark. Now, the opposite of the new moon, what happens on the in the middle of this cycle is the full moon. So right here in position 5, we've got the full moon. And we have all seen a full moon. It's going to look completely bright. So what we have is a cycle from completely shaded to completely bright back to completely shaded. Now, in all of the days between the new moon and the full moon, the moon is appearing larger and larger. It's getting brighter and brighter. So we call all of those phases between the new moon and the full moon, we say that those are waxing. And when we say waxing, we mean they are getting brighter. And on the other side, between full and new, every night they are getting dimmer. So we call those waning. Getting dimmer. So the amount of the lighted side of the moon we see gets smaller and smaller until we get back to that new moon where we don't see any of the lighted side anymore. So the first thing that's going to happen from new moon is you'll start to see a little bit of light and then a little more light and a little more light. And so if you've ever seen one of those moons where you just see a little bit of light, that's going to be called a crescent moon. And so a crescent moon is going to be just a small portion of light. And when we're drawing this series of the phases of the moon, the lighted side is always the side closest to the full moon. So I'm going to draw a crescent on the side closest to the full moon. And this portion of the moon is going to be in shadow. And this is called the crescent. So this would be the waxing crescent moon. As it progresses, a little more light, until you get half of the visible moon is lighted and half of the visible moon is in shade. Again, this dark side is always closest to the new moon in this arrangement. This is going to be called our first quarter. When we break the moon up into a cycle, this is 1/4 of the way through the cycle. So we call it the first quarter. If it continues to get lighter and lighter, I say if it does, then the next phase of the moon is going to be big and fat kind of moon, but it's not going to be completely full. So you're going to have just a tiny portion of the moon in shadow. And this phase of the moon is called gibbous. Have you ever heard of a gibbon monkey? I like to think of a big fat gibbon monkey belly. That's a gibbous moon. So this is the waxing gibbous. Now we have our full moon completely bright. And then for the rest of that month, it's going to be getting dimmer and dimmer each night. So a smaller portion is going to be lighted. So for the 6th, it's still going to be mostly bright, a small amount in shade. So that's going to be the waning gibbous. It's still the gibbous shape, but it's the part of the month where it's getting smaller each night. Then you have another quarter moon. This time the other side is in shadow, and that's going to be our 3rd quarter. Now, the reason it's the 3rd quarter is we have our 1st quarter. The full moon is technically the 2nd quarter, or the half of the cycle. And then this is the 3rd quarter has passed. And now we're going to have just a tiny bit of lighted moon, mostly in shadow. So it's going to be that crescent shape again, but it's going to be on the other side this time. So that's going to be your waning crescent moon. So this is what each of the phases of the moon looks like and how they get their name. If we say waxing, we mean it's early in the cycle. The moon hasn't become full yet. It's going to get brighter and brighter still. So we have our waxing crescent and our waxing gibbous with our 1st quarter. After the full moon, when every night it's getting dimmer, we call those waning. So we have the waning gibbous, the 3rd quarter, and the waning crescent. Then you get back to the new moon. By saying waxing and waning, you're telling the people whether or not the moon is going to be brighter tomorrow or dimmer tomorrow. And then the shape is the other name. So a waxing crescent means a small sliver of moon, but tomorrow it will be bigger. A waning gibbous means you have a lot of light, but tomorrow there's going to be less, and the day after that is less. Hopefully that makes sense. Tomorrow, or I guess Monday, Friday, I've lost all time. The next time you have a video for me, we're going to talk about why. We're going to draw a model that explains why the moon looks different at different times in the month.